In this video, we'll be looking at a typical early Italian Renaissance church. The Renaissance began in Florence, Italy in the 15th century. It also took root in Rome and Venice by the late 15th and early 16th century. The beginning of the Renaissance marked the end of the Middle Ages. The word Renaissance means rebirth or revival, especially of ancient Greek and Roman culture. We will see how this revival means that several characteristics of our typical Renaissance church are present in earlier Roman architecture. For emerging Renaissance architects in Italy, studying ancient Roman buildings was essential, since Greek buildings were more difficult to access. Knowledge of Greek and Roman buildings also came from Vitruvius, a Roman architect and engineer who wrote in the 1st century BC a 10-book treatise on architecture. Some of the big names in Italian Renaissance architecture are Filippo Brunelleschi, Leon Battista Alberti, and Donato Bramante. Renaissance church plans are innovative, so they vary from one church to another. In fact, variety is one characteristic of Renaissance church architecture. Our task is also complicated by the fact that Renaissance features were often added to churches built earlier. Renaissance architects admired earlier circular buildings with domes, like the Pantheon, built in Rome in the 2nd century. This admiration led some architects to consider a church with a centralized plan and a dome to be the ideal. Such a church could be circular, as in this 15th century painting of the perfect Renaissance city. Or it could have a Greek cross plan with a dome. All 4 cross arms are of equal length, as in this early 16th century church. This plan recalls Byzantine churches. But most Renaissance churches continued to use the basilican plan, albeit with modifications that often echo the centralized plan. The basilican plan originated in ancient Roman architecture. By the 10th century, the basilica had become the most popular plan for Christian churches in Western and Northern Europe. The plan is rectangular. It has a central nave, 1 or 2 pairs of aisles, a choir, and a projecting semicircular apse. The apse is usually located at the eastern end opposite the entrance. As the basilican plan evolved, it added, by the 12th century, a transept between the nave and choir. The arms of the transept project beyond the north and south walls and create a Latin cross type of plan. A tower can be erected above the place where the transept and nave cross. The aisles extend around the choir and apse. This creates a continuous walking space or ambulatory. The typical Renaissance church is also a basilica with a Latin cross plan. It is rectangular, with a wide central nave, aisles on either side of the nave, a choir, and apse. The nave is separated from the aisles by columns, or thick piers, supporting round arches. A dome rises above the crossing of the transept and nave. The main altar sits under the dome. The transept arms and the apsidal area can be more or less identical. Here all 3 end in semicircular spaces, as in a centralized church, like this one. There are some possible variations on our typical plan. For instance, the apse and the transept ends can be rectangular instead of semicircular. In some churches, there are side chapels against the north and south walls. These chapels open onto the aisles. In this plan, the chapels are indicated by small semicircular spaces nestled in the thick outer wall. Some churches have no aisles at all, only side chapels. The absence of aisles and their columns makes for a spacious and uncluttered interior. Spacious interiors were another feature of Roman architecture. When there are aisles, One way of creating a spacious interior is to increase the space between the columns of the nave arcade, so the view from the nave looks relatively free of supporting members. In our typical Renaissance church, the wide spacing of the arcade means the nave has only 4 square bays. The nave can be covered by a flat ceiling, or more commonly a barrel vault, as in this example. Barrel vaults can be coffered, that is, decorated with sunken square or octagonal panels. Coffering was also used in Roman vaulting. Aisles can be covered with barrel vaults, cross vaults, or small domes. Side chapels can have barrel vaults. The nave arcade usually comprises Corinthian columns supporting round, that is, semicircular arches. There is a row of windows beneath the ceiling. Round arches are the most common type in Renaissance architecture, as they are in ancient Roman buildings. The capitals of these Renaissance Corinthian columns support impost blocks, and the arches spring from them. Corinthian columns are popular in Roman architecture, and this type with impost block is sometimes used. For example, in the Basilica of Constantine, built in Rome in the 4th century. This Roman building also illustrates other features found in our typical Renaissance church, such as round arches, barrel vaults, covered ceilings, and a spacious, uncluttered interior.